Hey, my name is Sarah at Totally Stitch Craft, and today I'm going to teach you how to crochet the perfect granny square. Whether you've got zero experience or many years under your belt, you will find something helpful in this tutorial. We're going to cover how to begin the granny square, how to do the first few rounds, how to add more rounds, everything that you would need to know about how to crochet a granny square. We're going to cover it in this video. So let's get started. The first thing we need when making a granny square is some yarn. This yarn is a worsted weight yarn. It is a weight 4 yarn. You can find this weight of yarn in most stores. This is a 100% merino wool yarn. I have hand dyed it myself, and you can get this kind of yarn on my website if you wish, though any type of yarn from any store will do for this type of granny square. Now, when working with this particular weight of yarn, I will be using a 4.5 millimeter crochet hook. Now, when we talk about different sizes of crochet hooks, we mean the size of the hook on the end. This one is a 4.5 millimeter. If you're using a different type of yarn, the yarn will typically say what size hook is recommended. Begin with that, see how it works, and if you need to change it, then change it. But we're starting with this one. When making a granny square, we are working in the round, which means we start at the center, we work the stitches on the first round, then the second round, third and fourth, and so on, and our square gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Since we're starting in the very center, that's what we're gonna go over now. I'll begin with the tail end of my yarn, and we're going to make a slip stitch and put it on our hook. Now, you will hear some methods talk about a magic ring. In this case, we are not going to be using a magic ring. We're just going to be using a few chains at the beginning to make our initial circle. So I will hold that tail end with my thumb. I'm going to wrap the yarn twice around my finger, pull the back yarn over the front but not off my finger, and now the new back yarn off of my finger, and this makes my slip stitch. And I will go ahead and put this on my hook like so. Now what we're going to do is chain 4. In order to chain, I'm going to go ahead and hold the yarn in my left hand because I'm right-handed. I'll be crocheting with my right hand. I'll make sure that the tail is dangling down. We're not going to deal with it today. I will grab the yarn. I like to put it over my index and catch it with my pinky in the back, like so. So I've got it basically under these two fingers, and I've got my other fingers holding it. This just holds tension. What I mean by tension is I'm not just pulling the yarn freely, I'm actually holding it with my pinky and my finger. Okay, so I'll hold the yarn with my left, and with my right, I'm going to take my hook and grab the yarn. We call this a yarn over. Turn my hook and pull through that stitch that was on my hook. Now I've got 2 stitches. We'll do this 3 more times. So 1, 2, and 3. Now I have 3 chains on my hook, and it should look like this. If I see these little V stitches, right, 1 V, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to go ahead and turn my work so I can see these little alligator bumps on the back. I'll find the first one and insert my hook underneath that first bump, like so. I'm going to yarn over again, pull through that first loop on my hook and through the second. I'll take the tail and just move it out of the way, and if I pull this apart, you can see we've just created a little ring. You can see my finger right there. We've got a ring and it's connected. We're going to be putting all of our stitches into this ring. The next step is to chain 2, which gives us the height we need to start working our stitches. We are going to count this as a stitch. So I'll yarn over, chain 1, and chain 2. Now we're going to be placing 2 double crochets into the ring we've just created. I'm going to start with a yarn over. So I've just wrapped the yarn around my hook. You can either do that by moving the hook or by moving the yarn. Then I'm going to hold that yarn on my hook with my right index finger and put my hook through the ring we just made and catch the yarn in the back and pull up a loop. Now I have 3 loops on my hook. Now I'm going to yarn over, so I'm going to catch that yarn, turn my hook towards my work, pull under the first 2 loops, yarn over and pull under the next 2 loops. I've just created my first double crochet. I'm going to place 1 more and then we're going to chain 2. We yarn over, insert our hook into the ring, pull up a stitch, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Now we've got 3 double crochets because we're counting the initial chain 2 as a double crochet. The next step is to chain 2. 1, 2. You should be getting pretty good at chains by now. Now we're going to place 3 double crochets into our ring. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's 1. Let's do 2 and 3. When I yarn over and pull my hook back through, I like to make sure that it's facing me so I can pull through easily through my yarn and it doesn't get caught on my loops. We'll just pull through just like that. Now I've got 3 more double crochets. I'm going to chain 2 more. And now we're working on the 3rd side of our square. So we've got side 1, side 2, then we'll do 3 and 4. Okay, that means we're doing 3 more double crochets. I'm going to do these a little bit faster. So we've got 1, 2, and 3. Perfect. Chain 2, and now we're on to our 4th side. 4 sides makes a square. I am going to catch my tail in these next few stitches. This is optional, but I've just got it to my work in the back, and I'm going to make sure when I put my yarn through the ring, I catch that tail in the back, and I'm pulling my yarn over top. So we're going to make 3 double crochets on this side, 1, 2, and 3, and then we will chain 2. So we've just completed our last corner. Now it's time to join our first round. And the way that we do this is we find our initial chain 2, and we'll go ahead and find not the first chain, but the second, and insert our hook into that stitch. And this is called a slip stitch. So we're going to pull through that first part and pull through the loop on our stitch. And we just successfully completed round 1. We're going to move on to round 2 now. And this is probably the most important round of our granny square because it's going to set us up for success. Now, instead of working again in the same direction, we're going to change things up a little bit, and we're going to do this every round. We're going to turn our work. How that happens is that we'll chain 1, and I'm just going to flip my work like a book, but I'm not flipping my hook. I'm keeping my hook in my right hand and just turning around my work. Now that we have our work turned, we need to make our initial double crochet. We could chain 2 here, and that could count as our initial double crochet, but I really like to do something called the stacked single crochet. And this is a stitch I'm going to teach you right now. We're going to insert our hook into this chain space. That's what we call these when there's a space underneath a group of chains, or chain space. Insert our hook and pull up a loop. I have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through both loops on my hook, thus creating a single crochet. Instead of placing another single crochet next to it at the side, I'm going to place a single crochet on top of the one that I just made. In order to do this, I can see the little V here that was created by my single crochet. I'm going to insert my hook into this stitch that I just made, into these 2 pillars, being sure to catch the back as well, pull up a loop, and single crochet. Now I've got one single crochet on top of another, and I will count this as a double crochet. I prefer to do this rather than the chain 2 like we saw in round 1 because this gives us a fuller stitch and it looks a lot better. Now we will complete our first portion of the corner by placing 2 double crochets next to our stacked single crochet. Perfect. Now we will chain 2 and place 3 more double crochets into this same chain space. And this is how we're going to complete the first corner of every round. Well, this is how we're going to complete every single corner of our granny square. We're going to do 3 double crochets, a chain 2, and 3 double crochets. I'm going to skip all of these stitches and we're going to go work in the next corner. We will start with a yarn over, place our hook into the chain space and pull up a loop and make our first double crochet. We'll make 2 more and then it will be time for our chain 2. So we chain 2 and place 3 more double crochets into this chain 2 space. So we've got 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to take a break here. What we've just done was we started our corner with a stacked single crochet. We completed that corner by making 3 double crochets, a chain 2, and 3 double crochets. We skip the group of double crochets from the previous round and move on to the next corner, where we place 3 double crochets, a chain 2, and 3 double crochets. We will repeat this corner 2 more times, where we will place 3 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, a chain 2, and 3 more double crochets, 1, 2, and 3. We've got 1 more corner to complete, so that's 3 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, a chain 2, and 3 more double crochets, 1, 2, and 3. Now it's time for us to join the round. So we will go ahead and find the first stitch that we made, the stacked single crochet. We'll look for the V at the top and insert our hook underneath both parts of the V stitch. We'll bring our yarn through and through one more time to create our slip stitch. Then we will chain 1 and turn our work. We've just completed round 2 of our granny square. If you wanted a tiny granny square, you would end here and this would be sufficient, but I will go into round 3 and then round 4. Let's move on to round 3. Now you can see where we finished. We've actually finished in between 2 clusters. We call these granny square clusters, the group of 3 double crochets. In between our 3 double crochets on each side is a little gap, and that is where we're going to put our next cluster of stitches. We will start again with our stacked single crochet. So I'll insert my yarn into the space between the 2 clusters, pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through 2 loops to complete my single crochet. Then I will place 1 single crochet on top of the single crochet we just made, thus completing our first stitch. We will place 2 more double crochets into this space, and that is the first cluster of the round. Now we're on to our corner stitch, which is like all other corners we've done, where we place 3 double crochets, so our granny square cluster, separated by a chain 2 and 1 more granny square cluster. So I will complete that here with the 3rd double crochet, and now we're on to one of the spaces between 2 clusters of the previous round. And here we will do the same. We'll place 3 double crochets, thus completing another granny square cluster. Now we'll move on to the corner, which is like all other corners, where we do our 3 double crochets, a chain 2, and 3 double crochets. I just completed the last corner of round 3 and it's time to join. I will find that first stitch here and do our slip stitch to join our rounds. And like all other rounds, we will chain one, turn our work. Now we will be working into this first space with our stacked single crochet, like so, followed by 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, and then work into our corners. And we will go ahead and repeat the same pattern for as many rounds as you want to get as big of a square as you want, being sure to turn the work every round. Now the reason it's so important to turn your work every single round is just because of the way crochet stitches are shaped. So let's take a closer look at a double crochet. We have just completed a double crochet, and as you can see, this is my stitch here, and it's leaning to the left. Now all crochet stitches lean in this direction because that is how they are made. We're working towards the left, they're leaning towards the left. Now what happens when we turn our work is that we offset that. If all of our stitches, if we work them in the same direction every single round, they would all be leaning the same way, and thus you would create a really wonky square. It would kind of turn into more of a diamond shaped or more round and bulbous than we would want. When we turn every round, we're negating that leaning effect. And so this works with the granny square stitch. This works with actually any type of crochet granny square you want to make. If you are able to turn every round, I would recommend you do so, just so that you get a perfectly square every single time. I'll go ahead and finish round 4 off camera and join with you at the end, and then we'll see how wonderful the progress that we made is. Now I'm at the place where I need to go ahead and join for the round. We'll find the first stitch and slip stitch to it and chain 1. Now I'm going to say 4 rounds for this granny square is good. I'm going to cut my yarn and show you how to weave in the ends, just so they don't fall out and so that you make sure your granny squares are secure and you have no worries about the yarn coming unraveled. Now I've already done a chain 1 and I've pulled the loop, right? So I've got a big loop, but if I were to put my hook back on here and pull that tight, I could flip and start a new round, but I will just pull that yarn out so we have a loose loop, grab my sharp scissors, and I will go ahead and cut the tail. And now I will take my finger and stick it in this loop and just pull the tail out. And we've essentially created a knot here where our yarn is not going to back out of this knot, but we do need to secure the tail end in our square. I will take what's called a tapestry needle. It's just a very large blunt needle, and thread the tail end of my yarn through the eye of the needle. And now I get to thread this yarn back into my work. I typically like to thread through one of the double crochet stitches like so, pull that through my work, and then what I like to do is under a group of double crochets, I'll go ahead and thread the yarn underneath these stitches and then back one more time, catching one of the loops and pulling through like so. Then I can go ahead and clip the yarn, and we know that that is a secure end. Now we need to secure the one from the center. I'll thread that on my needle as well. And what I like to do here, you see how there is a gap in the center. I will thread my needle underneath all of these stitches in the round so that we can create sort of a drawstring where once we pull the tail tight, we have just created no space in this center here. Then we'll catch a loop. So I'm not threading back in where I came because that would undo the work. I will go ahead and skip over one bar of yarn and thread back the other direction, just a little ways, just until I feel that yarn tail won't come back out. There we go. And I will go ahead and clip this yarn as well. We've got two little scrap ends. I will save these for a further project where I need little tiny scraps. And we've got our square here. Now I like to take my fingers on all four corners and give it a nice stretch and push it out like so. And we have got ourselves one perfectly square granny square. If your granny square still turns out kind of misshapen, not the way that you were intending it to look, you can go ahead and use a process called blocking your work, either by wet blocking or steam blocking. This is a process in which when you're using fibers like yarn, like wool, even synthetic fibers, you can either get the yarn totally submerged wet or just steamed and then put it in the shape that you want, pin it in place, and then let it dry on its own, and the yarn fibers will maintain their new shape that you give them. So that is it for the perfect granny square tutorial. You can make the square as small or as large as you want to with any type of yarn, any size hook, and just a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, and some creativity. You can use these granny squares in any type of work that you want to do. If you're making a pot holder, I highly recommend you do not use synthetic yarn, i.e. acrylic yarn, because that will melt when it reaches a high temperature. If you're making pot holders, washcloths, towels, do use 100% cotton yarn for that type of project. Otherwise, use any kind of yarn you would like and start making some really beautiful granny squares. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to my channel. I want to post a lot more crochet content for you, and it really helps me when you are subscribed to the channel and when you like the video, because it lets YouTube know that you like my content and others will find the content and hopefully like it as well. Okay, that's all from me. Happy crocheting!